Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, the nice thing about Big Ten having media days at Lucas Oil Stadium is it's not just a boring hotel backdrop. You get the full field backdrop. Yeah. It's really cool. It's, I know where you are. That's a really iconic place, and especially in Big Ten football. But the internet out on the field is not very good, so we have to do it in the media lunchroom, where the iconic backdrop is a dividing wall between a couple storage areas. Mm-hmm. So, in case anyone's wondering why we're broadcasting from what looks like the back room of a Costco, that's why.
Yeah, there are conspiracy theories about why the internet is so bad on the field. But it is, and so we're here, and go ahead and throw your questions in. We'll get to them as quickly as possible. Throw some super chats. We'll get them to them even quicker. Today is the last day of Big Ten Media Days. We've got 6 coaches left to talk to and 6 groups of players overall. It will get underway at 11:30, beginning with Oregon head coach Dan Lanning. That will be our first time talking to him, hearing from him, other than seeing him on TV and that sort of thing. And then it will go to PJ Fleck, who we have talked to many, many times, and Mike Locksley at Maryland, which is always the
over under 9 minutes and 30 seconds.
Well,
of his 15-minute window.
It depends. I think the better question is, after his opening statement, how long? Because he could go. He generally won't go that long, but he could take up most of that time.
Over under. I'm really torn between 1.5 and 2.5 questions.
I would go over
1.5.
Yes, I might go all the way to 3.
Okay.
I'm gonna let it ride.
You're gonna go over 2.5.
I'm gonna go over 2.5 questions.
And in case you're wondering, these are the televised interviews on BTN, and they have 50 minutes blocked out for each coach. And the surest thing, it is like the sun rises in the east, and the Mike Locksley section of this, the Maryland beat never travels. So then there's no one who's asking him questions, and it's he'll get one question from the kid reporter, and then maybe one other, and then he's done 9 minutes and 27 seconds into his 15-minute window every single year.
Yeah, it feels like this is this could have been an email type of thing from Locksley.
This media days could have been an email.
So, and then after him, it's Jed Fish, Washington, first time talking to him in forever, and then Curt Cignetti, our first time talking to him, Indiana head coach. And then Sherrone Moore will wrap it up at 12:45. Not our first time talking to him as head coach, because we talked to him in Ann Arbor.
Correct.
As the acting head coach, because the previous Jim Harbaugh had been suspended for those games.
I don't remember. Is that true? I don't remember.
That is true. And that is not the same game that Sherrone Moore was suspended for. That was earlier in the season for NCAA violations and such. But I digress. And then after that, there'll be a little break, and then we'll get to go. The coaches all talk for another 45 minutes throughout the rest of the afternoon. Players will talk for 30 minutes after that, or in their own 30-minute segments. So a lot to, digest. Mostly this is the Michigan day. This is the Oregon day. Mm-hmm. These are the two most important, the two biggest names. That's why you've got Dan Lanning leading things off. And you got Sherrone Moore finishing things. I do wonder, though, with Dan Lanning, Deshaun Foster, UCLA head coach, yesterday was talking about NIL, and during his 45-minute breakout session mentioned that you don't have an unlimited salary cap with NIL, and then he threw in, well, Oregon does. And then there was laughter, and then he went on. And I'm wondering if that is brought back up to Dan Lanning here in this first session. I'm sure it will be brought up in a later session. But we need more coach feuds. We had it with Brett Bielema and Jim Tressel, Brett Bielema and Urban Meyer. Brett Bielema is too nice now. Jim Harbaugh, obviously, in all of the feuds that he had. But
may I remind you that Sherrone Moore is here today, and
so
Ryan Day was here a couple days ago.
I am all for this, and this the best way to you just kick the saloon doors open and announce your presence to the Big Ten. This would be a way for Dan Lanning to do that.
Well, I think when Dan Lanning gets asked that, if Dan Lanning responds, in a calm and measured way, that will tell me he's not extremely mad about it. And if Dan Lanning says something about we're from Eugene and then pauses for 20 seconds, that will tell me he's extremely mad about it.
I'm wondering. Yeah.
So we'll see. I talked to James Crepia from the Oregonian newspaper for an episode that is already on the board for BuckeyeHuddle.com for our members. It will go up as a morning show at some point in the coming days or weeks. We'll see how that goes. But I asked him specifically about the Phil Knight thing. And, to a certain degree, every time my team gets recruits, it's because of our academics and the family atmosphere, and because this is a special place. It's not like any place on earth. And when anyone else gets a recruit now, it is because them dirty cheaters are dropping bags. And that's been true in college football for, I don't know, since the days of George Gipp, maybe. But it's even more true now, because now it's legal to drop bags in certain ways.
You don't even have to drop them.
Yes, you can
hand them right over.
hand them, and you can hand them a big golf check and take a picture if you wanted to. Now that that's legal, everyone is kind of just pointing fingers, but no one is pointing more fingers than at Oregon. Now, what James brought up is, you got to remember, Oregon, yes, Phil Knight has been very supportive of Oregon over the years. You can get guys to come to your school, but if they're not happy, they can leave. Oregon has really not had a big outflow of talent. Oregon has been developing talent pretty well. Ohio State, one of the reasons that Ohio State or Georgia or Alabama under Nick Saban did not necessarily have to be the just bag with a dollar sign on it kind of program like some others in the SEC were at that point, are because of the development that occurs within the program. And Oregon is kind of in that range as well, where they have churned out NFL draft picks. So I think the answer is yes, Phil Knight is, being very supportive of Oregon because he wants to see Oregon win in his lifetime, but also that's not the only reason Oregon is having the success they are right now. Yeah,
and Oregon they are right in the middle, or they combine both worlds, basically, the NIL and the development, because it's not a place that you think of like, I can't wait to get to Eugene, but it's also, I can't wait to get to Tuscaloosa. Like, these are not normal cities that draw people, so you've got to get them there somehow and get them to experience it. And sometimes it helps with the NIL, and that's something that everybody can do. So now that everybody can do it, I think the complaints aren't, I don't know if they're as valid as they used to be, because it's like, when you would get upset about the SEC landing somebody, it's like, well, we're not going to cheat, and they're cheating. It's like, well, now you just don't have the resources. So I think a lot of times, if we're talking about the professionals,
are you calling certain programs broke boys? Is that what I'm hearing?
It's just like, I get annoyed with professional owners of major league teams or professional sports where they're like, they're all billionaires. So don't tell me about, we can't afford this. If you're going to play in this arena, then either accept your fate or do something about it.
Yeah, and that's I think fair. And now that everyone is this is all legal, and you can't use it as an inducement. Which okay, all right. Show me a program that is not using it as an inducement, and I will show you a program that is UMass. I mean, it's just like okay, but. You're exactly right. Like, and a lot of the time, it's not just the money. I just talked to Connor Morissette from USAFootball.com for another episode, season preview episode that's going to go up on our board a little later on today. And I've talked to him about their NIL, and they have been somewhat successful in bringing guys in, but they have not really, they have not landed a bunch of these, enormous, other than Caleb Williams, who really followed Lincoln Riley.
Right.
They have not landed a ton of these enormous names. And they missed on some offensive linemen who were in the portal who they wanted to get this earlier in the year. And I asked him about that, and he said, the money is there, but the alignment isn't necessarily there. They have had, they've had a whole series of athletic directors who were former USC players, and it's like being a former USC player does not necessarily mean you're going to be good at the administration piece of that job, which is pretty much all of that job. So, and then Mike Bond was there until last year, and then left as a result of a scandal. And so now they've got Washington's old athletic director. And I think she's, it sounds like she's maybe working on that. But, if you're not aligned, Alabama had boosters forever, but they were losing under David Shula. So Mike Shula, sorry, wrong Don Shula son.
Wrong bad son.
Wrong bad coach son, yes. Under former head coach Brian Ferentz. No, that's not right either. but you have to have the money. You also have to have the organization and the whole structure in place to kind of make sure the left hand knows what the right hand is doing.
Yeah, and I think now you're better equipped to pick up the steam on that one, because when you're talking about the organization wasn't there or initially for USC, it kind of reminds me of Ohio State early on. But that was also a reticence to jump in. Like, they wanted to see how all of this was going to shake out. They wanted to see what rules were going to come into play. All of that is kind of in place now. And you've got a new athletic director who that's part of the plan. But like you walk into you see this nice house and it's like, oh, I'm sure this is amazing. You buy it sight unseen, and then you open the doors and you see all of the work that needs to be done. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the interior of USC. But once that's done, I think you're going to see things thrive there. And Lincoln Riley, I saw him in a breakout yesterday talking about how USC doesn't take a backseat to anybody. They're already like on top of the Big Ten, and they're not interested in being anywhere else. And
well, I mean, everyone's on top of the Big Ten because everyone's 0-0 right now. I don't know that they're going to be on the top of the Big Ten by the end of the season, but
it's going to be fascinating when they get to Ann Arbor. See how that for both programs, because that's an opportunity for USC to make a huge statement, because they open with LSU, and that's going to be an opportunity. But they can lose that and still beat Michigan, and it's like now people are really going to take notice. You beat LSU and you lose to Michigan, and it's like,
Well, if they beat LSU and lose to Michigan, that's probably very good for the Big Ten in terms of the narrative around the conference, and a year when one of those conferences is probably getting 4 or 5 teams into the playoffs. So, if USC goes and gets killed by LSU and then goes, 7-2 in the Big Ten, that's probably not a great thing for the Big Ten. So, and vice versa. If USC beats LSU and then comes in and loses, and finishes 6-3, 5-4 in the Big Ten, well, then look, this team has in that case, it's just an meaningless early season.
Yes.
Tony, that was months ago.
Right.
Sorry, I heard myself saying words, and I'm like, this doesn't sound right.
You can't judge a team based on the season opener. That is not the same team as the team that is struggling, losing a close one to Georgia. I mean,
right? Yeah,
and losing close to Georgia is as much a win as anything.
Some might say the greatest win in program history. Do we want to do some questions?
Yes, for sure.
Let's hit some questions real quick. The football extraordinaire says, hi, how's it going? Is it true that Chip is calling plays this year? Yes, Chip Kelly will be calling plays this year.
Yeah, absolutely calling plays this year. Ryan Day is, as he said, he trusts Chip with his life. And if you trust somebody with your life, you might also trust them with play calling. He did want a former head coach to entrust. Like, he was going to entrust Bill O'Brien, or he said he was. When it was Brian Hartline, it was, we're going to see. Like, I'd like to, but that was with Ryan Day being, this is all he's ever done. Like, he's always been calling plays. He loves it. He talked about the aspect of all week you work on this one play and the right time to put it in and the right time to call it against the right scheme. And when it works, it's the best feeling in the world. And he's going to miss that. He'll still be involved with the offense. He's going to have, he can't just turn it off, but it's Chip Kelly's offense now in terms of the play calling. So I think missing out, Bill O'Brien taking the Boston College job seemed like at the time it was like not devastating, but this is a concern.
It was a little bit of an oof.
Yeah. And then, the timing was right for Chip Kelly, and it's felt not just seamless, but additive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, and I think they got something out of Bill O'Brien, because Bill O'Brien spent a couple weeks there and did, I think was doing some cataloging of things and, giving his thoughts on some things. So you got, you brought in the consultant for a couple of weeks, and then he went off to his new gig at Boston College, and you brought in Chip Kelly. And like you said, they didn't miss a beat. And, Ryan Day and Chip Kelly having had this close personal relationship and close professional relationship before, that probably makes that an easier working relationship. And Chip Kelly, having been Ryan Day's boss in the past, probably makes it easier for Ryan Day to look at him and feel like you can trust him to do stuff. So yeah, I think that's going to be a pretty clear, easy thing to do. And I think what was maybe most interesting to me is I was not there for the whole 45-minute Ryan Day breakout session, but last year it felt like the play calling was a huge chunk of that conversation, and it just I didn't hear a ton of that this year.
No, that's true, because there's a little bit of it, but it's like there's no question about it anymore.
Right.
There's an answer, so you've got the answer. With Brian Hartline, it was, well, how involved will you be? When would you know that you could do this? How much of the spring are you doing it? Did you let him call plays in the spring game? Did you, do you have the training wheels? All of these sorts of things. And there's none of that with this, because it's just understood. And everybody knows what kind of play caller Chip Kelly is, what kind of offensive mind he is. So there are no questions to ask anymore. You ask one or two, you get the answer, and you're like, I have no other questions.
Yeah. That's it. That's all I had.
Yeah.
So
thanks.
Next one from JT Mike says, ask the team up north who their QB1 is.
That will be asked, but I assume
it will be asked. The answer will be, well, we're still figuring that out. And I think the answer, honestly, is they're still trying to figure it out. I talked to Aaron McMahon from the Ann Arbor News for a show that we dropped for our Buckeye Huddle members on Wednesday. And, he talked about the fact that they have 5 quarterbacks. So it's Alex Orji is kind of considered the front runner right now. But you got Jack Tuttle, who is in his 7th year and has, he played at Indiana a little bit. Ohio State fans might remember him as Chris Olave's high school quarterback. Ohio State found Chris Olave because they were going to scout Jack Tuttle out in San Diego. So that is how long ago that he was in high school. He was played with Chris Olave. You have Jaden Denegal. You have Davis Warren, who is a former walk-on who might have been the one who looked the best in the spring game. And then you got Jaden Davis, but who's maybe the most highly touted, but he's a true freshman, so you're probably not going to go with him. So you got 5 guys. It sounds, based on talking to Aaron, it sounds like it's probably Orji and Tuttle are probably the top 2, but Tuttle, I think, missed a bunch of the spring. So, I genuinely don't think they know the answer. And the complicating factor there for them is Alex Orji is a very, very run-heavy quarterback. Jack Tuttle is a very, very pass-heavy quarterback. So you got to kind of make up your mind, because those are 2 real different offenses you're running if you've got one versus the other. Yeah,
it is interesting how you decide what do you want your offense to be, but that is predicated on what quarterback can actually do that. And what you want your offense to be may be the second best quarterback. So you're going to have to change some things around. I don't expect, I feel like they would make, if Tuttle and Orji are close, they're obviously a more run-based team, and the receivers, there are question marks there. So I would assume they would side with Alex Orji, and I do believe he took the first team reps through most of spring and in the spring game. That seems like where it is going. If Jack Tuttle, no offense to Jack Tuttle, like he was the same recruiting class or the year before, like Matthew Baldwin. Like it's been a long time. So it feels like just common sense tells you it's going to be Alex Orji or not Jack Tuttle. And if it is Jack Tuttle, I think that's a huge concern. It's already enough of a concern with Alex Orji having 1 career pass attempt back in 2022.
Yeah.
Nothing last year. We saw his effectiveness as a runner, but teams eventually catch up to that. So he's going to have to develop as a passer, and the receivers are going to have to develop as playmakers and legitimate downfield guys, reliable guys in moving the chains. And it can't just all be Colston Loveland and Donovan Edwards, because you need more than that. And Donovan Edwards has the up and down nature of what he's been doing in his career. I don't know how much you can rely on him to be Blake Corum.
Right. What are you leaning on there in your offense? Because the wide receivers are both, are new. You got Colston Loveland, but you can't build the whole plane out of the guy who's the home run hitter sometimes, but also sometimes not a home run hitter at all as a running back, and a tight end and a quarterback who can run but can't throw. So, and the offensive line is a question right now. I mean, there's a lot of questions right now for Michigan on that offensive side of the ball. Here's a question for the defensive side of the ball for Michigan. JT Mike says, ask Will Johnson if he's scared to guard Jeremiah Smith. I don't think if we ask Will Johnson a question about Jeremiah Smith, that would be exactly how we will phrase it. But I think you can ask Will Johnson about the challenge of going up against Marvin Harrison Jr. And is that something that you embrace, going up against a guy who's going to be a top 3 NFL pick? And when you hear the hype around a true freshman at Ohio State, is that is that something where you start licking your chops and saying, let's see what you got?
I wonder, would he even admit to hearing any of it? Like, oh, we don't pay attention to what's outside these walls, that sort of thing. But he's a cornerback, so he embraces every single challenge. I'll say he's a very, very good cornerback, so he embraces every single challenge. Some corners are like, yeah, he's not one of those guys. He wants all of that. And he's obviously going to be looking forward to playing every single receiver that he lines up against. He and Carnell Tate are going to have some matchups that are going to be awesome. Jeremiah Smith is going to be awesome. It's going to be a fun battle to watch. Wherever he is lined up, enjoy that show. And if you can get open on him, credit to you, because he's really, really good.
Next one from Ed Rogers. He just says, how much is our payroll? I saw something, I think it was the Columbus Dispatch reported that Ross Bjork had thrown out the number 20 million.
Yeah, I think that was Ross Dellinger maybe had talked to them,
then
it trickled down the line maybe.
Okay. Yeah, that was a number that was thrown out. I was not there for that, but I saw that number reported earlier in the week, and so that's certainly a possibility.
Well, and I think the thing to remember is that's not just recruiting.
Well,
that's,
right.
That's retention and all of that, and that's and what I also wonder is how much of that is all of it? Is it not just collectives? It's car dealerships. It's autograph signings. I assume it's all of that rather than just one piece of it, because that is a lot. But I don't think it's going to be that high every year, because the retention is not going to be like it was this year, where you have so many high-priced free agents, restricted free agents, if you will, that sort of thing. But I also wonder if you can get the people used to paying this much, then you can apply it in different ways, perhaps some more to the recruiting class or the transfer portal. But I just wonder how often people have seen that number and just applied it right to the recruiting class. And it's like, that's one aspect of it. It's not the entire 20 million or whatever.
Christopher Sowers says, I'm a Buckeye fan, but I do know that Oregon has the best facilities in the country, not to mention the uniforms. And Dan Lanning is a good coach. And with the NIL money, there's a lot to like at Oregon. Yeah, I think all that's true. NFL development, you can throw all that stuff in there. And just as people, I think, are saying, Ohio State is buying a team this year, it's like, well, there's plenty of reasons for players to want to go to Ohio State. Many of the same reasons, where they have, NFL development. Why do wide receivers go play for Brian Hartline? Well, let me point you to the parade of guys on the stage standing next to Roger Goodell, and that will help answer your question. And that's, I think that's true of Georgia. That's true of Alabama. Where I get more of a little bit of a jaundiced eye in terms of why are you getting all of these guys, is the programs that are, not winning and not developing. And it's like, you're still getting there. And I mean, I don't want to name any names, but I mean, you could, you can probably connect some dots there. But
no, yeah, for sure. And it is going to be interesting to see what Miami can do this year. There's a lot of pressure on them, I assume.
Why'd you bring up Miami?
I'm sorry. But you have the NIL deals that you've made, the portal guys that you brought in. Cam Ward, you won that lottery, or he won that lottery. But now, I do think Miami's going to have. I've predicted that they make the playoffs, will be close to the playoffs. That's also a statement about the ACC. And also, Miami can't be terrible forever, right, Tom? Can they be terrible forever?
I mean, past performance is no guarantee of future failure, but the past performance for the last 20 years or so has not been.
The development has not been great. I think they've had one skill player drafted in the first round since who's it's like 2007 maybe.
Yeah.
Since one of the tight ends that is now like a broadcaster maybe.
Yeah, Greg Olson maybe.
I think so. And it was like a receiver, Roscoe Parrish, like 28th or 29th overall or something like that.
I think Roscoe Parrish was on the.
Or not Parrish, one of the others like a Roscoe Parrish, but like 28th, 29th overall.
Yeah.
Yeah, Roscoe played against the Buckeyes.
Ed Rogers says, it's in our best interest for Michigan to beat Texas. Hook 'em horns. Well, there's a mixed message. I see what you're going for there. And then there was a follow-up conversation in the chat about whether that still matters. Strength of schedule and beating the and I think it doesn't matter as much as it did in the computer poll era in that way, because that was very strength of schedule factors directly in. Now, the committee who is going to be making these decisions, and it is still a committee in the 12-team playoff era, they are sitting down and they're talking things through. And, what are the data points they use? They use head-to-head. They use top 25. You want to have as many top 25 wins as you can. So Ohio State's non-conference schedule is not going to give them any top 25 wins this year. So you're kind of hoping that Oregon, Iowa, Penn State, Michigan are all top 20, top 15 kind of teams. And, did I say Iowa?
Yeah, I wasn't listening.
Okay. Same. You're hoping that, maybe you sneak someone else in there.
Mm-hmm.
You're hoping that you have a number of those good data points, because I saw someone on Twitter this morning looking at Ohio State's schedule and saying Charmin soft. And it's like, well, they might have a 1-2 game on the road and then also play the defending national championships and all champions, and also have to go play a top 10, top 15 team on the road in Penn State, and also have to play what's probably a top 15, top 20 type team in Oregon, in Iowa. I mean, you've got plenty of challenging games on the schedule. The non-conference is terrible this year, but that's because of the 1 year weird blip because of the change of conferences and all that kind of stuff. So, but yes, it is in Ohio State's best interest for Michigan to beat Texas, because if Michigan beats Texas, number one, that's another loss for, if Ohio State's an at-large, that's another at-large team in another conference that has lost. But it's also if Texas kills Michigan and LSU kills USC, guess what you're going to be hearing about on, listen, we have these data points, and that's not going to work in Ohio State's favor. So it would be better for Ohio State if USC beat LSU and Michigan beat Texas. But will that happen? Well, I guess we'll see.
And the CFP director was talking yesterday about strength of schedule, and he said, yes, it's still very important, but it's just a data point that we don't want to tie our committee's hands on how to use it. They can use it as much as they want, as little as they want. And as our buddy Marcus Harmon tweeted, like, committee director confirms the committee can still just do whatever they want and however they want to do it.
It is 11 o'clock a.m. in the Eastern time zone, which means there is some news that we can now report.
Yeah, breaking news. Archie Griffin will be dotting the I in the season opener against Akron this year. Halftime of that game, he will be dotting the I. The sousaphone players, I guess, surprised him at the WAC in early July, gave him the news, and of course, huge honor for him. He understands what this means. I can give you a quote from him on that. Says, the opportunity in Ohio Stadium to dot the I is a very special honor. I know that Woody was proud to have had that opportunity, and I am following in his footsteps, and I'm extremely proud of this opportunity. Of course, Archie is the all-time leading rusher in Ohio State history, over 5,500 yards, the only two-time Heisman winner. Now joins Bob Hope, Woody Hayes, Earl Bruce, John and Annie Glenn, and Dr. John Woods as non-man member eye dotters, and a huge honor. And it's the biggest honor that we know, pretty much any band could bestow upon any non-band member.
Well, and you read through that list of people who've had it, who've done this before, and it's like, boy, that is a pretty exclusive company.
Jack Nicklaus as well.
Yeah, that is really exclusive company, and you have to be a U.S. senator and astronaut, or one of the greatest maybe the greatest golfer of all time at that point, or maybe the legendary football coach at Ohio State. I mean, that is a pretty good selection of people to be in their company. So yeah.
You see the clips of when Woody does it, when Earl did it, like you can see the amount of respect they had for the honor, that the seriousness they took with it, and so Archie will no doubt do the same when he does it August 31st at halftime against Akron. Tom, what will the score be?
The score of the game at that point will be Ohio State 45, Akron 3.
You think Akron's going to hold them to a field goal? I was going to say 38, but 45. I also had them being held to a field goal, so I'll say 38-0.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Book it.
That's fair enough. Football extraordinaire says, Will Howard reminds me of bigger and more physical Justin Fields. Do you agree with that? He is, bigger and potentially more physical. I think, what you gain in the run game and or size, you're probably giving up a little bit in the arm strength and arm accuracy. He's probably not going to go top 10 or top 15 in the NFL draft. Probably. He's probably not going to be a Heisman finalist this year. I think he is similar to Fields in that he does give you the ability to run and throw the ball. The fact that he's bigger, he may hold up to some of that beating that you take.
Yeah.
I mean, Justin Fields got wrecked a few times at Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Fields took some real shots, and then you don't necessarily remember them because he got up and kept playing. But man, the James Skalski spear in the Sugar Bowl, that was one where I was like, man, he is out for the season.
No.
And came back one play later. Like, I mean, that was a
Michigan
superhuman.
game.
Yeah,
Missing a play.
yeah, and then coming back and throwing a touchdown, and just he was real banged up.
I don't like putting anybody on his level at Ohio State in terms of everything that he did, but I will ask you, Tom. He rushed for 484 yards in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
If I set that as the number for Will Howard, you taking over or under?
Over, I think.
I think so too. Yeah, and I don't know that it's going to be much over, but more games helps.
Mike Schaefer wants to know: is Tony drinking a Coors Light?
No, sorry. Diet Dr. Pepper.
Yes, yeah.
No
Ed
ads.
Rogers had that correctly pegged there.
The mountains are burgundy.
Yeah, it was not a. Oh, it looks like they've refilled the water now over there.
Okay,
Breaking
so
news.
we better go grab like 16 before we go.
Additional breaking news in addition to the Archie Griffin thing. The cooler has been restocked here, so we can drink water now. Mike Schaefer, really interesting question. Who coaches at their current school longer, Dan Lanning or Ryan Day?
I think when you look at those two jobs, like Oregon can be a lifetime job, but it has, I almost said it never has been, but it was for
Mike Bellotti.
Mike Bellotti. Ohio State has always been a lifetime job, but it doesn't usually last that long. So this is a really good question. My immediate thought is Ryan Day, but also he's already been at Ohio State for 6 years now.
Yeah.
And the lifespan of an Ohio State coach is about 10 years. And the lifespan of a college head coach at this point in this kind of game, like, do you want it? But I do think handing over the reins to Chip Kelly eases a lot of stress for him. And I don't know that Chip Kelly has the desire to go be a head coach again. So he could be there for a few years.
He could. How long is Chip Kelly at Ohio State? Or does Chip Kelly go take an NFL offensive coordinator position? That's a possibility that happens at some point. And, the thing that would make me say Day is that Day has no real ties to any other college football program. So, is he going to want to go coach in the NFL? I don't know. Maybe that's a possibility. That's always a possibility. You just kind of are tired of the,
if the Patriots come calling.
Yeah. Well, the Patriots just hired a coach, but if you're tired of the recruiting and the transfer portal and the constant turmoil, maybe that pushes, and that could very easily push Dan Lanning into the pros as well. I think that Lanning, and this may be a little bit of being biased by the Willie Taggart and the Mario Cristobal, we love it here. It's great here. We're here for 2 years, and then we go back to, Florida State and Miami, respectively. Lanning did just pass up the Alabama job, which is.
But that's the not wanting to follow a legend.
Sure. So does he become, if Kalen DeBoer is a 3 and out at Alabama, does he go follow him? Sure, maybe. You don't want to be the guy after the guy. You want to be the guy after the guy after the guy. So sure, I don't think George is opening up at any point soon. So that's but maybe he wants to go be in, especially if Phil Knight is no longer around, maybe that makes that a less, a more challenging job. And we'll see how they adapt to the Big Ten. They may run into the Big Ten and be a top 2 kind of team. And
why leave?
They landed arguably the 2 single best quarterbacks in the portal this cycle, where they got Dylan Gabriel and they got Dante Moore. And so now you have, the immediate guy, and then you have a guy who you can, build for a year, and then you've already got next year's guy kind of in the pipeline. That's a potentially a really attractive job for the short to medium term, but I don't think either of them is super likely to be somewhere else in 18 months or anything like that. But I don't know that either of them is super likely to be there 10 years from now either.
But I can also see, and I've put this out there, I could see Jerry Jones making a call to Dan Lanning.
That's true.
And it can be hard to turn down, I don't know, $15 million a year, and maybe fewer headaches for the NIL stuff and things like that. Because I guess at least with Oregon, there's one entity that you have to deal with in the NIL space, basically, and everything else can revolve around him, as opposed to going somewhere else and there might be 15 different voices that you're trying to deal with. I don't think you need to leave Oregon, but people do it. I don't know if it's, it also depends on where your family likes to live.
Yeah.
I was talking with somebody about a head coach in the past who stayed in a hot state for like 3 years, and the wife was like, "We got to get out of here." It's just too much here. And I don't know what it's like living in Eugene. Maybe it's a stressor for some people. It's certainly not too hot or whatever, but the life of the comfort levels that you have in those places, it just depends, and the support and all of that. I don't think anybody needs to leave anywhere. I would say Lanning day is at Ohio State longer, just because there's recent history of the coaches at Oregon. They're just, as you said, they keep leaving. So
yeah. One thing that was really interesting, that this came up on my conversation with Aaron McMahon from the Ann Arbor News. He was talking about Sharon Moore, and he was listing all these different things about Sharon Moore. And boy, he came to Michigan as the tight ends coach and worked his way up and had no real ties to the state, no real ties to the program before, but sort of worked his way up the chain and became a trusted lieutenant. And then when the spot opened up, it became his job. And I'm going, this is all sounding very familiar, other than the fact that you said tight ends there.
Well, that was Ryan Day's first job at New Hampshire, tight ends coach.
There you go. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. It was. He's talking. I'm kind of going, Yeah, this is all sounding very familiar, which is very funny that two guys who, about as openly hostile to each other as it gets, without actually having the Nick Saban, Jimbo Fisher kind of fight that they had a couple of years ago. When you ask them about respecting the opponent, it's always yes. Oh, great respect for the program, and you didn't hear a lot of that last year when that question got asked. So
no.
So yeah, I think there's a little bad blood, but it was. I did think it was very funny that you've got two guys who, and one of them calls the other guy, calls the other one third base, and just got the head coaching job of literally the defending national champions. Which I don't know. You're about 3/4 of the way to home plate at that point, I think. So yeah, I thought that was a very interesting conversation there, but sort of similar situations.
Yeah. All right. I think we're going to have to wrap up so we can get back out to the field there. So I want to thank you all for tuning in. Hit the thumbs up if you have not yet done so. And of course, continue to follow us at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so, because we just went live randomly today. Not so random, but we will continue to do that and drop other videos as well. So check us out at BuckeyeHuddle.com as well. Become a member there. Check us out on the message board where we are, especially hanging out today, posting updates from everything we see and hear today. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.